stop and think for a second. How many times this past week did you automatically reply, "I'm fine," or "I'm good," when someone asked, "How are you?" 10 times? 20? Now for the critical question, how many of those times was that actually the truth? What if I told you that this seemingly harmless habit, this social ritual, is actually slowly eroding your mindfulness and inner strength? What if there's an answer that doesn't just replace the empty "I'm fine," but transforms that mundane question into a catalyst for growth and a demonstration of your unbreakable will? In this video, we aren't just learning a new phrase, we're going to crack the ancient Stoic mindset, the wisdom of emperors and philosophers, to engineer the ultimate response to "How are you?" This response will change not only how others perceive you, but how you perceive your own life. Stick with me, and you'll discover how one simple conversation can become a daily workout for your spirit. Before we get to the specific words, let's momentarily transport ourselves back to ancient Greece and Rome. That's where Stoicism was born. And this isn't some dusty philosophy reserved for bearded sages in robes. Think of it as an operating system for the human mind, a system specifically designed to function under the most extreme pressure, on the battlefield, in the political arena, or during exile. Men like Emperor Marcus Aurelius, who governed a vast empire ravaged by wars and plague, or Seneca, advisor to the notoriously unstable Emperor Nero, or Epictetus, who went from being a slave to an influential teacher. They all used Stoicism as a practical tool. Their mission wasn't just to theorize about virtue, it was to live it every single day. They sought a way to maintain inner tranquility and clarity of mind, even when the world around them was collapsing. And the key idea they left us is a simple, yet incredibly powerful distinction, knowing what is within our control and what is not. It is on this foundation that we will build our perfect response. So let's dive into the core of the problem. What exactly is the fundamental flaw of the phrase "I'm fine"? Picture a typical morning. The alarm fails to go off, you spill coffee all over your shirt, you're hopelessly stuck in traffic, and inside your head, a daunting list of urgent tasks and anxieties is already running on repeat. Inside, an emotional storm is brewing. Irritation, anxiety, pure panic. You finally rush into the office, and the first colleague you encounter smiles and asks, "Hey, how are things?" And what immediately comes out, almost on autopilot? "Hey, I'm fine. How about you?" This is where a microscopic act of self-betrayal takes place. You aren't just hiding your true feelings. You are actively invalidating them. You are telling yourself and the rest of the world that this internal chaos doesn't matter, that it's just normal. By repeating this pattern day after day, we essentially train our brains to ignore our own emotional signals. We create a huge disconnect between what we feel and what we actually express. This habit isn't just about politeness, it's a profound form of self-deception that prevents us from being truly honest with ourselves and consciously engaging with life, with all its inherent difficulties and challenges. A Stoic, however, strives for absolute honesty with reality, and the very first step toward achieving that is to stop lying about your own inner state. Let's turn our attention to the question itself. How are you? Is 99% of the time not a genuine question. It's a social password, a ritualistic greeting that neither invites nor expects a deep, honest reply. The person asking is likely in a rush themselves, and they are certainly not prepared to hear a detailed status report on your current affairs. They are simply waiting for the verbal key, usually fine or good, so they can move along with their day. Realizing this, we find ourselves caught in a trap. If we respond honestly and elaborately, we violate the unspoken rules of the game and put the other person on the spot. But if we give the standard reply, we betray ourselves, as we've already established. It seems like a dead end. The Stoic, however, sees not a deadlock, but an opportunity. They understand that the purpose of the answer is not to inform the conversational partner, who isn't truly listening anyway. The goal of the Stoic response is something else entirely. It is, in that very moment you are asked, to remind yourself of your core principles. It is about transforming an empty social exchange into a mental exercise, an act of mindfulness. Your reply isn't intended so much for the other person's ears as it is for your own awareness. It is an instant self-adjustment, a calibration of your inner compass. To truly grasp the essence of the Stoic answer, we first need to internalize the core idea of Stoicism itself. For now, forget the image of the emotionless blockhead or rigid statue that the word Stoic often conjures up. True Stoicism isn't about suppressing your emotions, it's about understanding them correctly. The key to this understanding is the so-called dichotomy of control. Imagine dividing every event and every aspect of the world into two distinct boxes. In the first box, we place everything that is completely under our control. These are our thoughts, our judgments, our decisions, and our actions. That's it. The list is actually remarkably short. Into the second, much larger box, we put everything else. The weather, the economic situation, traffic jams, the words and actions of other people, our health, our reputation, our past, and our future. The Stoic tells us, your happiness and peace of mind depend entirely on which box you choose to focus your attention on. If you worry about the things in the second box, you're effectively setting yourself up for suffering because you are trying to control the uncontrollable. But if you concentrate all your energy on the items in the first box, you will gain unbreakable inner strength, because nobody and nothing can force you to think or act in a certain way without your express permission. Let's take this powerful concept, the dichotomy of control, and apply it directly to our question. When someone asks, "How are you?" they are fundamentally asking about the events occurring in your life. That is, the contents of that second, uncontrollable box. Traffic, your boss's behaviour, the health of loved ones, financial ups and downs. The typical answer, whether great or terrible, is entirely focused on these external circumstances. If work is smooth, we say, "I'm great." If we catch a cold, we say, "Not so well." We essentially tether our internal state to things that do not belong to us. We become a weather vane that turns with every gust of external wind. The Stoic, however, does the exact opposite. Their definition of how they are isn't based on external happenings, but rather on their response to them. Their focus is solely on the contents of that first box. Are their thoughts in order? Are they making rational, measured decisions? Are they acting virtuously? Therefore, the Stoic answer to "how are you" must shift the focus from the uncontrollable external to the controllable internal. It shouldn't reflect the condition of the world around them, but the condition of their spirit, their inner will. This is a fundamental shift in perspective that changes absolutely everything. So, what is the first component of the ideal Stoic response? It is the acceptance of reality as it is, stripped of emotional judgment. The Stoics teach us that events themselves are neither inherently good nor bad. They simply are. It is our evaluation that assigns the label of good or bad. For example, rain is not bad weather. It is simply water falling from the sky. We label it bad because of our judgment, perhaps because we wanted to have a picnic. A traffic jam is not a nightmare. It is merely a large number of vehicles stopped in one location. We turn it into a nightmare through our impatience and frustration. Therefore, when a Stoic reviews their day, they don't say, "I had a terrible day because my boss yelled at me." Instead, they would state, "Today there were external events I could not control, such as the words spoken by another person." This approach instantly removes the drama from the equation and allows you to view the situation clearly. This doesn't mean you should ignore difficulties. On the contrary, it means facing them head-on without assigning the labels of good or bad. This is the first step toward regaining control. Stop fighting reality and simply acknowledge the facts. It is the foundation for a calm, measured, and rational response. Let's look at a concrete example. Imagine you've had a genuinely rough day. Say you completely bombed a major presentation. That's the undeniable fact. It's an external event. Now, the average person, if asked, "How are things?" would likely respond with something like, "Awful. I totally messed up today. Everything's going down the drain. That single statement blends the objective fact, its negative emotional assessment, and the immediate catastrophizing of the future. The Stoic approach, however, begins by consciously separating the fact from the judgment. The fact, the presentation was unsuccessful. The judgment, I completely failed. Or, this is awful. A Stoic focuses purely on that fact. But the challenge is, how do you express this in conversation without coming across as cold or robotic? Instead of saying, I'm having a terrible day, you could rephrase it as, I encountered some significant challenges today, or the day delivered some unexpected results that I'm currently analysing. Notice how these phrases contain no complaint and no despair. They are simply an acknowledgement of the facts. There were difficulties, but crucially, they convey dignity and a lack of panic. You don't deny the problem, but you also refuse to let it define your entire internal state. You acknowledge that the world threw a challenge your way, and you view it exactly as a challenge, not as a catastrophe. This shift changes your entire internal chemistry. You instantly stop being a victim of circumstances and transition into becoming an observer, an active investigator of your own life. Once we accept reality without judgment, we move on to the second, arguably most vital component of the Stoic response. This involves shifting the focus entirely onto our reaction, onto the things that are truly within our power. If the first step related to the second box, the raw events, here's what happened, then the second step deals with the first box, and here is what I choose to do about it. Marcus Aurelius, writing in his private journal, said, choose not to be harmed, and you won't feel harmed. Don't feel harmed, and harm itself disappears. This doesn't mean we should pretend that nothing happened at all. Rather, it means recognizing that there is a crucial gap between the external event and our internal reaction. In that gap resides all our power and our freedom. When confronted with a challenge, the Stoic asks one key question. What virtue can I demonstrate right now? Is it courage, temperance, justice, prudence? His primary goal is not to change external circumstances, but rather to respond to them in the best, most virtuous way possible. This is why his internal affairs are always in order, provided he acts correctly, even if the entire external world is collapsing around him. His success is measured not by external achievements, but solely by the quality of his internal judgments and decisions. This quality, this commitment, is what the Stoics referred to as the indestructible citadel of the soul. Let's go back to our example of the failed presentation. We already formulated the first part of the response. I ran into some challenges today. Now we add the second component, focusing on our reaction. The full answer might sound like this. I faced some challenges today, and this is a great chance to practice resilience and analyse my mistakes. Or even shorter and more powerful. Things happen that are outside my control, but I am in full control of how I react to them. And that's all that matters. Feel the difference. This statement radiates strength, not weakness. You are not complaining. You are stating a fact and immediately declaring an active position. You are not a victim. You are a student extracting lessons. You are not broken. You are merely training. This response, even if you say it just to yourself and not to an interlocutor, instantly shifts your state of mind. It reminds you exactly where your true power lies. Instead of wallowing in self-pity, you immediately switch into a mode of problem-solving and personal growth. Every difficulty stops being a curse and becomes a training ground for the spirit. And that is the essence of the Stoic mindset. But there is a third, deeper level to the Stoic response, one that you could call the pinnacle of this philosophy. This is the concept known as Amor Fati, the love of one's fate. It sounds a bit dramatic, but the underlying idea is simple and elegant. The Stoics, particularly Marcus Aurelius and Epictetus, didn't just suggest putting up with what happens or simply tolerating hardship. They proposed going further, to love it, to accept everything that occurs as necessary and correct, just as if you had chosen it yourself. Why? Because the universe or the logos is in their view, rational and perfectly ordered. Everything that happens is part of a single flawless design, and even what seems like evil or misfortune to us actually serves the greater harmony. Therefore, resisting fate is like arguing with the laws of physics. It's pointless and it drains your energy. It is much wiser to accept everything that happens with gratitude, treating it as fuel for manifesting your best qualities. A failed presentation? Excellent. That's the perfect chance to develop humility and diligence. A friend's betrayal? Wonderful. That's an opportunity to practice forgiveness and self-sufficiency. This is not masochism. It is the highest form of reality acceptance, granting an incredible sense of freedom and inner peace. How does this concept of Amor Fati transform your inner world and your typical response to life? It utterly demolishes the very possibility of complaining or feeling dissatisfied. If you genuinely believe that everything that happens is ultimately for the best, even if you don't yet understand why, then it becomes impossible to have a bad day. You only have days filled with lessons and fresh opportunities for growth. You stop dividing events into good and bad, and instead you begin to see them as a single, continuous stream of life, always carrying you in the right direction. When you achieve this state of mind, the question, "How are you?" is no longer a challenge. You aren't searching for something positive to say. You genuinely feel that everything is exactly as it should be. This profound state isn't dependent on whether you got a major promotion or were suddenly fired. It hinges entirely on your choice, the conscious decision to accept and love your fate. You are no longer a victim of random circumstances, but an active, grateful participant in the great game of life. Your inner peace becomes truly unshakable because it no longer rests upon fragile external supports. It is grounded instead in a fundamental trust in the order of the universe. This is the ultimate inner fortress that can never be breached. Here is the crucial point to understand. The Stoic response is, first and foremost, an internal dialogue. It is not a performance for an audience. Often people new to Stoicism make the mistake of turning these powerful phrases into rote mantras that they recite just to appear wise or unflappable. They might say, "I focus on what I can control," yet inside they are boiling with resentment or anger. That approach simply doesn't work. The words are just the tip of the iceberg. They must be an authentic reflection of your actual thought process. Therefore, before you respond to someone else, respond to yourself first. When someone asks you, "How are you?" or presents you with a challenge, use that moment as a deliberate pause. Take a deep breath and quickly scan the situation through the Stoic lens. First, what is happening right now? The facts, stripped of all judgment. Second, what elements of this are within my control? My thoughts and my actions. Third, how can I best respond in this exact moment? By practicing virtue. Only after this swift, internal calibration will your external response carry any real weight. It won't just be a canned phrase, but a genuine reflection of your inner state, and people will sense this. They won't just hear the words, they will feel the internal composure and tranquility standing behind them. Let's now turn our attention to specific phrases you can actually use in everyday life. It's crucial to understand that there isn't one universal answer. Your choice depends entirely on the situation, the person you are speaking with, and how deeply you want to engage in that dialogue. We'll start with a simple yet versatile option. When things are genuinely challenging and you don't want to lie and say everything is fine, but you also don't want to vent or complain, you can respond with, "I'm focused on what's within my control." This phrase is both elegant and multi-layered. First, it's honest. You aren't claiming everything is perfect. You are subtly hinting that there are difficulties. Second, it shows you have a proactive stance. You are not a passive victim. You are an active participant. Third, it establishes a clear boundary. You are not inviting the listener into a lengthy discussion of your problems, but you are also not pushing them away rudely. Essentially, this phrase is a polite way of saying, "Some things might be going sideways, but I'm handling it. and my internal stability doesn't depend on those external factors. This is the answer of a mature, responsible person who takes ownership of their emotional state. The second practical framing, one that is slightly deeper and more philosophical, is this: I am practicing virtue in the face of today's events. While this response might sound a bit elaborate for casual office chatter, it is an incredibly powerful tool for self-alignment. What does it mean? It means you view everything that happens, the good and the bad, as a chance to build your character. If you receive praise, you practice humility. If you face criticism, you practice patience. If you encounter injustice, you practice courage. Life stops being a chaotic series of events and transforms into your personal character workshop, a gym for the soul. This response shifts the focus entirely from the outcome to the process. It doesn't matter whether you win or lose the external game. What matters is how you played and the qualities you demonstrated. For some listeners, this answer might spark an interesting conversation about your core principles. For most, however, it will simply register as a concise, I'm handling things. But for you, it serves as a powerful reminder of your primary life mission: to get better every day, utilizing whatever raw material the world throws your way. But what if you don't have the time or the desire for even those slightly detailed replies? What if it's a quick chat in the hall and you need something incredibly brief yet perfectly stoic? This is where the concept of Amor Fati truly shines. A response steeped in this philosophy can be profoundly simple. It might sound like, everything is exactly as it must be, or perhaps even shorter, all in good time. These phrases carry immense weight. They don't signal that things are good or things are bad. They signify the total acceptance of reality, the totality of existence. You are not fighting reality, you are moving with it. This is a truly disarming response. It cuts off any need for further probing or pity. Instead, it projects quiet confidence and total acceptance. Crucially, this must be delivered not with a tragic sigh, but with a slight, almost imperceptible smile. The smile of someone who recognizes that even within chaos there is an inherent order, and who completely trusts that order. This is peak everyday stoicism, expressing an entire philosophical doctrine in a few simple words. It simultaneously ends trivial small talk and fortifies your own inner spirit. It is the perfect reply for those moments when any more words would be superfluous. The key here is making sure we don't fall into the opposite trap. Stoicism is not a call for complete emotional self-disclosure to every single person you meet. Sometimes people who are tired of the fake "I'm fine" start dumping all their problems onto random acquaintances. That is certainly not the Stoic approach either. Seneca emphasized the importance of choosing your friends wisely, noting that you shouldn't share your deepest thoughts with just anyone. Stoic honesty is first and foremost about being truthful with yourself. Your response should be accurate, but it doesn't have to be detailed. You are under no obligation to tell a co-worker about an argument with your spouse or your current financial difficulties. That is private. The goal of a Stoic response is not to offload your burden onto someone else, but to affirm your capability to handle those issues independently. It is the essential balance between a flat-out lie, everything's perfect, and an inappropriate emotional outburst. Everything is horrible. Let me tell you what happened. The Stoic stands directly in the middle. They acknowledge their problems exist, but they do not put them on display. Instead, they speak about the internal work they are doing to manage them. This shows not just strength, but respect. Respect for yourself and respect for the person you are speaking to, whose time and emotional space you aren't burdening with excessive details. But here's the most interesting part. How does such an unconventional response impact the flow of communication? Imagine that instead of the standard "I'm fine" reply to the question, "How are you?" you say something like, "I'm focusing on what's within my control." What goes on inside the other person's head? First, there's a slight system malfunction. They were expecting a simple password, but they got a meaningful statement instead. This forces them to momentarily snap out of autopilot and actually think. Two things can happen next. The The first and most common, the person realizes you aren't interested in small talk. They nod and they move on. And that's fantastic. You just save time and energy by bypassing a pointless exchange. The second option, your answer truly hooks the other person. They might ask, "That's an interesting way to put it. What exactly do you mean?" We pause. And that's where you find the opportunity for genuine, deep human connection. You get to share a piece of your philosophy, turning an empty ritual into a meaningful conversation. In essence, this kind of thoughtful, stoic response acts as a filter. It screens out superficial interactions and opens the door to authenticity, provided both parties are ready for it. You stop being a passive participant in social games and start setting the tone and depth of your own communication. Let's bust a common myth right now. Many people believe Stoicism is simply a way to become cold, detached, and emotionless, like a robot. They assume that by adopting this mindset, you push people away and come across as callous or uncaring. The truth is, it's actually the complete reverse. True Stoicism leads to deep compassion and profound empathy for others. Why? Because when you stop wasting energy agonizing over things you cannot control, you free up a huge amount of mental resources. You no longer get irritated by minor annoyances, you don't instantly take offense at criticism, and you don't spiral into despair over setbacks. Your mind becomes calm and clear, and from this state of tranquility, you can genuinely see and hear other people. You can offer them not your own neuroses and complaints, but steady support and a rational, clear perspective. A Stoic doesn't say, "I don't care about your problems." They say, "I see your difficulty, and while I cannot solve it for you, I can remain calm and clear-headed while standing by you, helping you focus on what is within your power." That isn't coldness, that is real, effective empathy, as opposed to just swapping emotional outbursts. The primary long-term benefit of adopting this practice is building mental and emotional toughness, or, as the modern term goes, resilience. Every time someone asks you, "How are you?" you get a chance for a micro-training session. Instead of reacting mindlessly, you pause, you look inward, apply the principles of Stoicism, and formulate a deliberate, conscious response. Initially, this might take effort, but with every day, with every repetition, the process becomes faster and more automatic. It's like building muscle at the gym. You won't see results after a single workout, but after months of consistent effort, you become fundamentally stronger. Similarly, by regularly practicing the Stoic response, you strengthen the muscles of your mindfulness, self-control, and acceptance. And when a real, major crisis hits your life, and it inevitably will, you will be ready for it. You will already have the developed skill of facing difficulties, separating facts from emotions, and focusing only on what you can control. The seemingly trivial question, "How are you?" will become your daily dojo, your personal training ground for the spirit. And finally, we come to realize that the Stoic's ultimate answer isn't spoken at all. Words are merely crutches, especially in the beginning stages. The highest goal of the practicing Stoic is to achieve a state of inner tranquility and self-possession so profound that it is felt and understood without a single word. Picture someone walking into a room. They don't fret, they don't complain, and they don't boast. They move with calm confidence. There is clarity in their gaze and dignity in their posture. When asked, "How are you?" they might simply smile and nod, and in that single smile and nod, there is more power and truth than in the most eloquent speech. Their state speaks for itself. They are the answer. Others instinctively sense that they are in the presence of someone at peace with themselves and the world, a person they can rely on. This is the ultimate outcome of the practice. Your answer to "How are you?" is not what you say, it is who you are in that moment, and the daily work of refining your thoughts, judgments, and reactions is the path to becoming that person. A path that begins with the decision to never again simply say, "I'm okay." So let's wrap things up. We discovered that the common reply, "I'm fine," or "I'm normal," isn't just a meaningless phrase. It's a subtle form of self-deception that pulls us away from reality. We learned that Stoicism offers us an incredibly powerful alternative. The best answer to "how are you?" isn't a canned formula. It's an entire 3-step process. The first step, accept reality exactly as it is, stripped of emotional labels. Second, shift your focus from external events to your internal reactions to what you actually have control over. And the third, the highest level, embrace your fate, accepting everything that happens as beneficial or good. The true Stoic answer is not words but a state of being, a state of inner composure, mindfulness and calm that you project out into the world. And every time someone asks, "How are you?" you gain a precious opportunity to practice that state. You transform an empty social ritual into an act of self-improvement. Thank you for sticking with this video until the very end. I hope you found it not only interesting, but genuinely useful. If you did, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss our next deep dives into practical philosophy. Now here is a question for you, and I genuinely look forward to reading your answers in the comments. What was the most challenging situation in which you had to answer the question, "How are you?" And more importantly, what would your answer be now, armed with the knowledge of the Stoics? Let's discuss this below. Until next time.